The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants.
It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ferenc Toth, President and founder of Secure Estate Management. Take charge of your financial future with your personal bank. Now, here's Ferenc Toth.
Hey guys, welcome to the program. I'm very happy to introduce you to Ferenc Toth. This is our first show. He will be on Money Radio 1510 AM, 105.3 FM every Tuesday at noon. This is your personal banker show. Ferenc is a nationally acclaimed speaker and educator on financial literacy. He is a successful entrepreneur of several businesses, including retail, real estate, and for the past 15 years, Secure Estate Management. Ferenc is also chairman of the board of a community bank in formation. Ferenc will be teaching us about how powerful financial concepts used by the wealthy, known as your personal bank. You can gain control of your money, create tax-favored income, and access for funds over your lifetime. Now, it's very happily my pleasure to introduce you to Ferenc Toth.
Thank you, Jason. That was awesome.
You have a lot to introduce, Ferenc.
I do. It's pretty exciting. So basically, I introduced myself. Jason, you did a great job. I have been wanting to share this information. Actually, I have been around the country at various investor groups, and the response has been so overwhelmingly positive that bringing it to a larger audience like radio just seemed like a natural thing to do.
Well, I think this is a great honor for us. And again, every Tuesday at noon, you can tune into the program. And throughout the show, we'll be giving you the information on how you can follow Ferenc on his various sites and social media. So let's dive into it. What are we talking about? Your
personal bank. Basically, it's a concept. I always tell people, think of it as a paradigm shift in thinking about your money. And the first thing I always tell folks is this, is if you're going to think about running a personal bank, you got to think about how does a bank operate? In other words, you got to think like a banker versus an investor. And there's a difference. Basically, the difference is, and I put it to you this way, when an investor, we're taught to invest money, right? And we typically take that money and we trade those hard-earned dollars, typically, to purchase an asset, right? And the asset, and our expectation is the asset will increase in value. Now, in most cases, when you talk to investors, Jason, what do they always talk about? I made X amount of return, right? Okay, so they're focusing on the gains only, and they're really, in most cases, not creating any cash flow, which, by the way, is probably the most important thing most of us need.
Right.
Okay, and they rarely ask, what's my recourse if things go wrong?
Sure.
I get clients, prospects all the time, hey, I got this great investment. It's going to make me 20% of your return or whatever, and I'll ask one simple question. That's awesome, but if things go wrong, what's your plan B?
Then what?
And I get
Of course you do.
Okay, and that's typically the most common situation we run into. Jason, I say this all the time. If you buy a stock or a business or a piece of real estate, for example, can you tell me what it's going to be worth in a year?
Not really.
You can guesstimate. You can look at charts.
Sure.
But you don't really know.
Not exactly.
Okay. And many people have said this. If you're investing primarily for appreciation only, how is that different than gambling?
Right. Interesting concept.
Right. Again, markets go up, markets go down. And I'm not just talking about the stock market. I'm talking about real estate markets, precious metals markets, any kind of market you can think of. I always say, anybody remember Bitcoin?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What happened to that?
Yeah, exactly. My point is, markets go up, markets go down. There's cycles, okay? Don't be surprised or shocked by those cycles, okay? So the return is uncertain. There's little or no cash flow in most cases, and there's no downside protection. Now, if you're going to think like a banker versus an investor, they're coming at money from a different angle, aren't they?
They are.
Now, here's another question I always ask Jason. There's a lot of people out there, particularly after 08, 09, don't have favorable impressions of bankers.
Correct.
Myself, my wife and I owned 22 properties at one point, personally. We saw that here in Phoenix, things were going crazy. That was back around 05-ish. Right? Realized, hey, we got 05, 06, we got to start getting out. We started divesting various properties, and we had about 6 left, and we were actually building by then. So we were buying land, developing it, building properties. I had no idea back then how risky that was.
Right? Now we know. Hindsight, that whole
Hindsight.
2020 thing, huh?
Exactly. This is what I did personally. It's not what we advise for clients.
Correct.
And so, you learn the hard way sometimes. And bottom line is, when the 08-09 happened, I had some interesting experiences with banks.
Right.
Which kind of brings me to my other hat you mentioned I wear, is I'm now chairman of the board of a community bank here in formation. We're planning to open in the spring of 2020. And when that opportunity first presented itself to be on the board of a bank, I first said no. Because, I didn't like banks. Right,
bad impression.
Yeah, I had bad experiences, right? And it was my wife, I got to give her credit, who said to me, wouldn't it make sense to be on the inside?
Great idea.
You learn after you've been married a while to listen to your partner, right?
Yes, sir. I will agree with that.
I didn't in my early years, okay?
I agree with that as well.
And that's why we got into some of the problems we got into financially. Hey, this is a great idea. We should go forward. And she was like, I don't know. But you learn to listen.
Correct.
Bottom line is, so I thought about that a little bit. I said, you're right. That makes a lot of sense. So as I got involved in the process of learning about banks and banking and all that, what's funny is I'd been teaching a lot of these concepts to clients for years prior to that. This just validated everything I'd been teaching. And so now I say to people, you got to think like a banker versus an investor. I'm the chairman of the board of a bank. I think there's a little credibility there now.
Absolutely there is.
So when you think about how a banker thinks versus an investor, here's the difference. Jason, have you ever taken out a mortgage or an auto loan?
Of course.
Most of us have at some point in our life, right? Now, when you sign those papers, you knew you'd have payments, right?
I did.
Of course. Now, did you plan to make those payments?
I did.
Of course you did. You wouldn't sign the papers otherwise.
Right.
In fact, you went through a whole approval process to get the loan in the first place, right? Well, guess what? The banker knows you're going to make those payments too, don't they? With a very high degree of certainty.
Correct.
Okay. And what are those payments to the banker? Cash flow. Okay. And if you didn't make the payments on the house or the car, what would have happened, Jason?
They take it back from you, I believe.
Exactly. It's called foreclosures and repossessions, right?
Yes, sir.
Bad stuff.
Bad stuff.
And what do they do with that asset? They turn around and sell it to somebody else to generate payments from that person to create cash flow again.
Correct.
Here's my question. Are bankers really risking their money?
Well, that's the big misconception, because I don't know if they are or not, Ference.
Collateralized loans very, very rarely lose money for the lender.
Oh, okay.
In fact, the lending industry tells you the value of collateralized loans versus uncollateralized loans. And here's what I mean. A collateralized loan today, a house or a car, what's the current interest rate with decent credit? 4 or 5% range today? Okay. What is it for credit cards?
Oh, much higher.
Yeah, double digits.
Right.
Okay. Typically 3-4 times more, right, of interest. So here's my point. The lending industry, and by the way, no one looks at risk, money risk, more than the lending or the banking industry, do they?
No. Nobody.
They're the leaders in that. So they're telling us as a lender to us that a collateralized loan is 2 to 3 to 4 times safer. They basically by the rate of return.
Okay.
So if you don't have collateral, a recourse when they're lending, again, they're going to charge 2, 3, 4 times a rate to pay for that risk.
This makes perfect sense. If you didn't understand the banking world, now you kind of do.
There's a piece of it. I'll share some more probably in the next section. We'll go into more depth. My point is real simple. The banker, the lender, is creating a secure cash flow through our payments. Okay? And really what we try to teach people is, again, the criteria for good investment for a banker, secure positive cash flow and collateral, or in other words, downside protection. If you go to a banker and say, I got 20, 30% return, if there's no collateral, they're going to loan the money.
All right, guys, we're going to be right back with more with Ference Toth. This is the first show in a series that hopefully will be on for a very long time. We've got a lot to talk about. When we come back, we're going to actually talk about how Ference has spent the last 20 years in the financial industry and what makes him an expert in My Personal Bank. You're listening to a brand new program right here on Money Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
For more information on your personal bank, call Ference at 866-515-6280 or online at yourpersonalbank.com.